Okay. All right. So today we've got Maya and Tessa, who are our OT students working with us, and they will be talking about really disability in the workplace, but how you can potentially manage FND while working or adapting to going back to work or retraining. So I'm going to hand over to Maya. Just keep an eye out once I make you host that new people might still want to start logging in.
Yeah.
So Maya, make host. Okay, so you're getting that now, Maya.
Thank you. My PowerPoint just went weird, so I'm just going to quickly reopen it before I share my screen. Okay, perfect. Go back to Zoom. All right. Share my screen. Can everybody see that? Excellent. So I'm Maya, as you know, I'm an OT student working with Kate at the moment. This is our last week of placement, and Tess is another OT student who'll be doing this presentation with me. So this is about FND in the workplace. The worker role has an important contribution to a person's identity. Today, we will discuss how you can return to work in some capacity, as working plays an important role in who we are and what we do. As most of you probably know, you can have involuntary job loss as a result of health conditions such as FND. This job loss refers to an event, is negative, often unpredictable, and generally involves a sequence of stressful events. There are considerable long-term economic impacts on individuals, loss of psychosocial assets, and it disrupts your status and interactions with family and friends. Okay, so you're probably all thinking, yes, we already know this or have experienced it. This is why you're here today, right? To learn ways to work with FND. Now that I've said the negative impacts of job loss, let's move on to more positive aspects so you can learn how to work with FND. But before we talk about that, let's talk about disability discrimination. It is when a person with a disability is treated less favourably than a person without a disability in the same or similar circumstances. There is lawful and unlawful discrimination. Lawful discrimination is when a person with a disability is treated less favourably than a person without a disability. Lawful discrimination is when a person cannot meet the inherent requirements of a job. It is not unlawful for an employer to not employ the person. Luckily, there is the Disability Discrimination Act that makes it against the law to treat people unfairly because of a disability that aims to promote equal opportunity and access for people with disabilities. Okay, back to lawful discrimination. Employers do not need to make changes if this will cause major difficulties or unreasonable costs to the organisation, but the employer must demonstrate that the changes are too onerous. For example, the installation of a lift could be considered unreasonable. However, asking for a ground floor office space would be reasonable. Although employers can do this, they are also required to make workplace changes if the worker needs to perform essential functions of the job. The employer should discuss the needs with the individual to thoroughly consider how an adjustment might be made and get professional advice. These reasonable adjustments include changing recruitment and selection procedures, modifying work premises or equipment, providing training or other assistance, and changes to job design, work schedule, or other work practices. So now that we have covered that information, how can you get back to work? You may need to involve a workplace rehabilitation provider, which could be any of these professions in the orange boxes on the screen. They will need to complete various assessments with you to help determine the best strategies you can use to return to work. And in this case, it's just returning to work after being diagnosed with FND, not an injury. This assessment procedure will most likely be ongoing for you due to the long-term diagnosis of FND and its fluctuating nature. The ultimate outcome of this assessment is to get you back in the same job with the same employer. If that is not possible, then it is aimed down the hierarchy listed here in the boxes on the screen. The first step of an ongoing assessment is to assess the need. This could involve an initial assessment to get to know you, a workplace assessment to assess your work site, a functional assessment to determine your capacities, or a vocational assessment to determine your skills and history of work. The second step involves return to work planning, where strategies, a time frame, and estimated cost is outlined. This is where the hierarchy that I mentioned before on the screen here comes in. The third step is an active implementation and review of the plan. This is where broad strategies are trialed, reviewed, and progress and barriers are indicated. This is the crucial step to involve all treatment providers and for the employer to ensure to ensure everyone understands the strategies used and the employment requirements. Sorry, I just admitted someone else into the Zoom. Okay, the fourth and final stage ensures a durable return to work for you. There we go. A durable return to work for you, where the aim is for you to remain safely in your job for 13 weeks, negotiate long-term strategies, and enhance your independence and confidence whilst working. We will now go over some strategies and examples of things you and your workplace can do to help you in working after your FND diagnosis.
Modifying work demands is one way to help you complete your work more effectively. This can involve modifying work tasks, work practices, and the work environment. Another way to help you return to work is to build your capacity. This doesn't necessarily mean your physical capacity, but it means increasing your skills and ability so that you can learn ways to work more efficiently, manage your symptoms, and participate in your work roles. This can be completed through instruction, coaching, training, and education. Suitable duties can also help you return to work. These can be modified work hours or days, which is the easiest and best way to aid you in returning to work. This can help you to return to work in a slow, gradual process so that you can gradually build up the hours or days that you're working. You can also complete your duties at a different work site, such as your home, completely different duties altogether, or undergo training to increase your skills and abilities. So you can also combine all of these suitable duties as necessary. So now into the examples of some workplace interventions. So the first one here is called a Recover at Work plan. This is something that you can fill out with your workplace rehabilitation provider's assistance and with your employer. So I think Maya's just going to talk us through the form now.
I will. I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and reshare so I can get the form up for you guys. Okay, amazing. All right, so this is the Recover at Work plan for your employers, and you can also fill it out yourself. So what you just need your details in these boxes, like your work, your supervisor, or your employer. And then this is the most important section. So this is, you have to outline your capacities. So what you can currently do with your FND diagnosis and symptoms, the proposed tasks that you could do and at work and how long you want to achieve them for, and then the duties. So what duties you can do at work and what hours or days of work that you will be able to do, and any equipment or modifications or strategies that you would need to help you do these duties that we identified up here. And then you just go through it and review it and plan the arrangements, and then you do an agreement between you, your employer, and your health professional or workplace rehabilitation provider. And I'm just going to reshare for the PowerPoint. Okay, cool. Hopefully that's back up.
It's not back up yet. Now it is.
There we go. All right.
Cool. So computer workstation ergonomics is another intervention that can be used to assist you in working, especially if you have a desk or computer job. So the environment that you work in must be as comfortable as possible for you. If you would like more advice on the best layout for your office or workspace, you could consider consulting an ergonomist, who are people who are specialised in this area. So adjusting equipment alone will not be all that is required. It is also important to assess your workflow and the activities that you're performing, and to plan them so that you can make regular changes in your position, using pacing to gradually do more. An awareness of your posture and the ability to change your posture remains essential to optimise work safety. So the picture on the slide is an example of an ergonomic workstation. So I will now go through the best setup. So to start with your chair, it should have a 5-point base, an adjustable seat height, and a backrest that has good lumbar support for your lower back. Generally, we say that armrests aren't recommended, and this is so that you can tuck your chair in under the table easily. When sitting, you want to have the chair close to the desk and your feet flat on the floor or on a footrest, as is shown in the picture. And that's because if you have to adjust the seat height and your feet aren't flat on the floor, you'll need a footrest so that your feet are stable. Your backrest should be at approximately 100 to 110 degrees, and you should try to remember to reposition yourself frequently just to avoid any areas of pressure developing. Your screen should be directly in front of you at approximately arm's length, with the middle or the top of the screen at eye level. When using the keyboard, your forearms should be parallel to the floor and resting on the desk, with your elbows at about 90 degrees. The feet of the keyboard should be down so that the keyboard's nice and flat, and this avoids wrist extension, so this kind of movement of your wrist. And you should move your whole hand when typing, because otherwise your wrist is moving like this. So instead, move your whole hand across the keyboard. Use the mouse with your whole hand resting on it and small movements. Your desk should also have some common items within reach and be kept clear of clutter as much as possible. If you frequently use a telephone, you should consider a headset if you're not already using one. If you're using a laptop for prolonged periods of time, an external keyboard and a laptop stand should be used. On the screen now are some different items that can be used to create a more ergonomic work environment for you. So there's an ergonomic mouse, keyboard, chair, and a sit-to-stand desk, which would allow you to change your posture. Some functional education tips also include taking regular rest breaks, approximately every 30 minutes, varying the tasks you complete, focusing on something further away every 10 to 15 minutes to avoid eye strain, and trying to learn to touch type, as it requires less repetitive movements from your neck to look down at your keyboard and then up at your screen.
Managing pain at work can aid you in completing all your work roles and responsibilities. But before we talk about some strategies to help manage your pain, here's a video about it.
Everyone agrees that pain is a universal human experience. We now know that pain is 100% of the time produced by the brain. This includes all pain, no matter how it feels, sharp, dull, strong or mild, and no matter how long you've had it. You might have had it for a few weeks or months. This is called acute pain, and it's common with tissue damage, say from a back injury or ankle sprain. And generally, you'll be encouraged to stay active and gradually get back to doing all your normal things, including work. Or you might have for 3 months or more, and this pain is generally called persistent or chronic, because in this type of pain, tissue damage is not the main issue. What's less clear, though, is when you're told you have chronic pain, is knowing what's best to do about it. Well, in Australia, chronic pain is a really big problem. In fact, 1 in 5 people have it. Having a brain that keeps on producing pain, even after the body tissues are restored and out of danger, is no fun. Some people say it still feels like they must have something wrong. But that's just it. Once anything dangerous is ruled out, health professionals can explain that most things in the body are healed as well as they can be by 3 to 6 months. So ongoing pain being produced by the brain is less about structural changes in the body and more about the sensitivity of the nervous system. In other words, it's more complex. So to try and figure out what's going on, you need to retrain the brain and nervous system. To do this, it's helpful to look at all the things that affect the nervous system and may be contributing to your individual pain experience. What can help is to look at persistent pain from a broad perspective, and by using a structured approach and a plan, it's less likely that anything important will be missed. Let's start with the medical side. Firstly, taking medication can help, but only to a limited extent. It is the more active approaches that are necessary to retrain the brain. So using medications to get going is okay, and then mostly they can be tapered and ceased. Some people also think surgery might be the answer, but when it comes to a complex problem like chronic pain, surgery may not be helpful. So if you're thinking of surgery, it's best to get a second opinion and remember to consider all the things.
Sorry.
Next, it is helpful to consider how your thoughts and emotions are affecting your nervous system. Pain really impacts on people's lives, and this can have a big effect on your mood and stress levels. All those thoughts and beliefs are brain impulses too, but you can learn ways to reduce stress and wind down the nervous system. This helps with emotional well-being and can reduce pain as well. The third area to consider is the role of diet and lifestyle. Now, it turns out that our modern lifestyle might not be so good for us. In fact, what we eat and how we live may really be contributing to a sensitized nervous system. Looking at all the things like smoking, nutrition, alcohol, and activity levels, and seeing if there are any issues is a good beginning. And these things can go on your plan. Then there's often enormous value in exploring the deeper meaning of pain and the surrounding personal story. By stepping back and looking at all the things that were happening around the time the pain developed, many people with pain can make useful links between a worrying period of life and a worsening pain picture. For many, recognizing deeper emotions can be part of the healing process. Last, but by no means least, is physical activity and function. From the brain's perspective, getting moving at comfortable levels without fear and where the brain does not protect by pain is best, and you'll gradually restore your body's tissues. So to sum up pain, it comes from the brain and it can be retrained. And when looked at from a whole person or broad perspective, gives you a lot of opportunities to begin. So get a helping hand if you need it, set a goal and begin.
Hopefully that video was a bit helpful for some of you or most of you. We'll keep going. Next slide. Here we go. All right, so some strategies to managing pain include just trying to stay at work as much as you can despite the pain, as there are many positives, including a financial benefit and the maintenance of your worker role. But this may require adjustments and problem-solving skills from the employee, you, and the employer. So dealing with stress is also another way to help manage pain related to work tasks and daily life. Jenny, the other OT student on placement with us, is doing a webinar on Wednesday about relaxation if you would like to join or if you've heard about it. And ergonomics, like Tessa mentioned before, also aids in managing pain at work. By having the right ergonomics, you can increase productivity and manage pain and fatigue at the same time. If you are thinking, wow, I cannot manage daily activities at the moment, let alone work right now, then that's okay. Even just returning to being able to complete your normal fun and daily activities that you need and want to do can help you feel prepared to be able to go back to work. And even as a first step, voluntary work can also help you be getting prepared for more demanding work later on. Example 4 is a flare-up management plan. So we will talk about the flare-up management plan, which may be of interest to you. You need to be prepared and have a written plan to follow to help enable you to continue working. This plan may involve education on how to manage flare-ups by accepting that they will occur and identifying changes in activities that may have led to a flare-up. This involves having an awareness of triggers and adopting coping strategies early to reduce the symptom flare-up where possible. Communicating with others, such as family, work colleagues, and your employer and your health professionals about their role in helping you managing flare-ups. Self-management strategies are also crucial in facilitating management of symptom flare-ups. This involves a range of ways that help you de-stress and can include collaborative goal setting, use of equipment, and pacing, which Tessa will go into now.
So most of you have probably heard of pacing. So it is when you complete tasks with intervals of rest in order to conserve energy. It is highly beneficial to do to help in reducing fatigue and managing symptom flare-ups. But the trick is in learning how to pace and implementing these strategies. It is far easier to say than do. The spoon theory picture is great as it demonstrates that different tasks have a different amount of spoons of energy to complete, and you will only have a certain amount of spoons depending on how fatigued you are on the day. You can think of these little pills of energy as spoons, jelly beans, whatever works for you. In terms of work, there are some strategies to support this pacing process. The first thing you probably want to do is write down all the tasks that you need to do for work. The next thing you want to do next to this list of work tasks is think about how much energy or the number of spoons you need to complete these tasks. By seeing how much energy is needed per task, then you're better able to plan your workday. When learning how to pace, it is best to perform these tasks at a level that requires less of these spoons, such as 50 to 75% of the energy that you would normally require. After a task is completed at less capacity, give yourself a break. Usually this break is as long as the task was completed for, but it can be any length of time. This allows for the energy or spoons that you just used to complete the task to replenish a little. Once you can do your work tasks at this lower level of capacity or energy without major fatigue, then you can start to increase the amount of energy you use for your work tasks. Keeping a diary is also beneficial to help keep track of your fatigue levels at work and what tasks you are completing that increase your fatigue. This can help increase awareness to tasks that are using a lot of energy or spoons that you may not have realized before. This can help guide the strategies that you use to assist in pacing at work or in prioritizing tasks. If you want to practice pacing before going back to work, you can also use this theory in everyday life. Using the same idea of writing a list of all the tasks that you need to complete during the week and thinking about the amount of energy or spoons you need to perform these tasks. This can help you practice pacing and build a routine before you think about returning to work. It will also help you to identify the tasks that require more or less energy and how you can spread them out throughout the day or week. So now that we've gone through all of that information, it's time for us to tell you about what an occupational therapist can do to help you through all of this. So OTs can complete various assessments such as initial, functional, workplace, ergonomic, and manual handling assessments. They can also give you advice in regards to job modifications, aids, and equipment. Training in manual handling and ergonomics can also be completed by OTs. Most importantly, an OT can also aid in training employers, helping them to understand FND and how they can support and assist you in your role. This can include helping you to talk to your employer about FND and how it can influence you at work. OTs can also assist you in determining the reasonable adjustments that your employer needs to provide to you and ensure that they are in accordance with the legal requirements of the Disability Discrimination Act. Whilst on the topic of training, OTs can also aid in vocational training or retraining to aid you in doing a new task, role, or job. There is an interactive website that details some jobs that you will be able to do based on your previous work history and skills. Maya was going to talk us through this website. Does anyone want to volunteer to be the person that we use as our example?
Turn on your microphone if you're willing to volunteer.
Yeah, I'm happy enough.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Noreen. I just have to stop sharing again for a second so I can reshare for you. All right, can everybody see the job outlook screen? Excellent. So this is a cool website I found while researching for this webinar, and you can do heaps of stuff on here. You can do a career quiz, explore careers around where you live, grow in industries, and a skills match, which is what we're going to do today with Noreen's help. Okay, so what you do, we're going to start it. Okay, so we're going to type in the careers that you have done in the past. So Noreen, if you're happy to share some careers that you've done, it doesn't have to be all of them, just a few.
Business analyst.
Business analyst.
Training officer.
Business analyst, let's go. This one, and then you go. Oh, add. Okay, what was the other one, sorry?
Training coordinator.
Training coordinator, yeah, that's come up.
Yeah.
And add. Would you like?
Occupational development.
Can't spell. Organizational. Is there any of these that have come up as I'm typing?
Yeah, I'd go more the HR manager would probably be closest to what's in there. Yep.
Perfect. Add. Would you like to add any more?
That's probably enough.
Enough. Excellent. So then we hit next. And then it comes up with the skills that you have on those jobs. Yep. So you can scroll down and read through them. We don't need to read through them all at the moment. And then see jobs that use your skills. And then here's all the jobs that pop up that you could do based on what you've done before. So human resource advisors, management consultant, software engineer, software testers, and then it just keeps on going. And that's this website. Would anyone else like to have a go?
We can pop the link for the website in the chat so you can have a go on your own after we're finished if you would like.
Yeah, I think that is a good idea. I will stop sharing. Back to the PowerPoint. Excellent. And we will we'll give you guys a flyer as well with different various links to help you that might be useful when you're returning to work. Thank you, Noreen, for volunteering. Okay, so now on to some positive stories and advice about people who have disabilities or FND and have been working. Okay, so this first one is about the FND podcast, which some of you may or may not have heard about. So the FND podcast was developed and began in March this year by someone who was diagnosed with FND. This person developed it to create awareness of FND, advocate for others with FND, create a sense of community, and to most importantly, let others know they are not alone, as this person was when they got their diagnosis, and I'm assuming many of you were when you got your diagnosis. This person was able to use her previous skills she gained from nursing to help people in a different way through sharing unique experiences and insight into living with FND. His podcast has now gone worldwide and has its own merchandise to help raise funds for FND research. Words of wisdom from this person is that you will be able to find your identity again. Focus on something that you can do now rather than focusing on what you were able to do. Another story is about this man who was dreamt of becoming a pilot ever since he was a child, but he became diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa about the age of 10 or 11. So meaning he won't be able to become a pilot because this retinitis pigmentosa meant he would eventually become blind. So his pilot dreams went out the window, but nonetheless, he stayed positive and developed a plan B, which eventually had to be turned into a plan C, and thought of new dream jobs that would make him happy. The advice on the screen is that he gave to people in his situation or any situation: be strong, be grateful, have a backup plan, and embrace who you are and own it. No one knows you better than you, and being different is loads of fun. So adapting to your disability diagnosis of FND, it can be overwhelming to get the diagnosis of FND. In terms of work, just try and be adaptable as much as you can. Use transferable skills. For example, the ability to communicate well, train others, or conduct research can be used in a variety of settings. Explore various opportunities, such as networking groups, to find out what opportunities might be available to you. Lastly, get help from employment services and agencies to help with job seeking if you wish to find a new career. So as most of you know, you can pursue a career after a disability or the diagnosis of FND. Once you have adapted to the diagnosis, you can pursue a career. This just may require a period of adjustment, which is normal to assist you in adjusting to your symptoms about the diagnosis, Once you are ready to return to work, you should think about getting dedicated support, such as disability employment programs, which can further help you prepare and adjust back into the working routine. Training and skill building may also need to occur to enable you to work to the best of your ability and to maintain your worker role.
Maintaining your worker role is crucial due to the positive impact of working and sustaining employment. Working draws you into a social life and helps to mitigate other challenges such as financial stress and feelings of low self-esteem. This may require some accommodations, but is all worth it in the end. Lastly, before we finish up for today, here is some tips on specifically working with FND by Managing Chronic, which is an Instagram page. Focus on what you can do at work. Plan your week, work tasks and rest. Know your disability benefits and accommodations and your employee expectations. Keep your employer informed of your disability changes in person and writing. Also, follow up with all parties involved to ensure the right paperwork goes to the right people. Thank you for listening today. We hope you have learned a lot in terms of working with FND.
Here is our references. And does anybody have any questions while I just share the flyer with useful links in the chat?
So I can post the flyer in the group as well. Yeah.
Perfect.
In case people are having problems downloading it from the chat.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay. So does anyone have questions or things that they want to discuss about, returning to work? I know it can be hard to talk to employers, especially about an illness that, not many people know about. So trying to negotiate and have these conversations can be challenging. But does anyone want to ask any questions or share any stories? Because we've got a bit of time.
I would say, following on from this presentation, there's a couple of things I'd like to delve into more. Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest challenges, obviously, many of us still have the same skills that we had, but we have a much shorter window of cognitive excellence. The endurance is a big factor. So one of the main challenges that I've had has been finding short duration, whether it's paid or unpaid employment opportunities. So the Job Outlook is a great resource, but perhaps I have not yet been able to find a location, web location or whatever, a way to find short duration engagements. And the other thing is I'd love more information around strategies for communicating with an existing or a new employer around not disclosing disability, but more around that conversation around supports. So recently I had a conversation with QDN, the Queenslanders with Disability Network, and they almost gave me a menu of supports that I might like, which was a great idea, where they said, well, do you need help with organising things? And I went, I'm pretty organised. And they said, well, what would it look like if we actually took this part of organising off your plate so you didn't have to do that? And do you need assistance with transport, or how long can you concentrate for? So they actually had like a menu of supports you could choose from, which was amazing, because as the person with FND, you don't always know what's available or what you need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So some kind of menu of supports you could pick and choose to then frame a conversation around what you need in terms of accommodations would be super.
Yep, that sounds good.
And then in terms of, and I'll shut up after this, but in terms of good stories, I've been engaging with the @chat community and been doing things like usability testing for their AT portal that's about to launch, for their e-learning course for their assistive technology peer navigators. So I've done an accessibility and content review for their e-learning course. So I've been trying to use, it's only about an hour or two at a time. It's big bucks. It's normally a $30 gift certificate for an hour or two's work. But for me, that's about my long-term, I know I'm not going to be back at work tomorrow. It's about me building endurance.
And I think that's one of the important things, is doing those short things and sort of testing yourself without committing to, a full-time job or, a 2-year contract sort of thing.
Yeah, and the other thing I've been doing is participating in some research studies, because again, it's the same thing. And I volunteer as a sim patient as well, 6 times a year. But trying to find those opportunities is quite arduous and difficult. And if you're not in the right place at the right time, it can be hard to find. So that would be a really great.
Yeah. And we've had, did you want to say anything else, Noreen?
No, I'll shut up now.
Okay. So we've had someone in the chat box. So with teaching and return to work. So potentially with teaching, looking at sort of casual teaching and teaching aid potentially. And then someone said my symptoms are movement, tremors, walking, stutter, word loss and fatigue. So, I mean, that will make it hard in terms of movements, tremors and walking, potentially being seated. So how you do your role, you can adapt. And fatigue is something which probably nearly everyone in our cohort experiences. And, going from sort of not working and then going back to full-time work is obviously going to be a massive change and will wipe out a lot of people. But looking at what the girls were talking about with pacing and also the spoon kind of model, using that to sort of manage fatigue, and also really looking at that sort of graded exposure. So doing, going back to school part-time, teaching one class, or potentially even tutoring. So looking at how can you take your skills but do it in a manner that's going to work for you. So private tuition could be another thing that potentially someone could do. Did you want to ask any other questions or comments, Narissa, in that chat box? Just wait to see if she has any comments. Anyone else have questions while we're just waiting on the chat box? No, thank you. Response. Okay, cool. And I guess the other thing is also starting off with volunteer work, because often volunteer work can lead to paid work. And sometimes it's about creating new opportunities rather than trying to go back to what you're doing before and potentially feeling bad around, I can't do what I used to do. So starting off with something small, that something might grow, which you've probably seen with the podcast. I mean, that's got really, really busy. And certainly with, my organization, that started off as like a volunteer kind of, Facebook group, which has now ended up with Australia-wide organization providing services. So things can come out of, things that you didn't expect. So just looking at, what you can do. The only thing with volunteering is watching your hours pacing, but also valuing yourself and your time. I agree with that. So someone said about volunteering is how you value yourself. And I do agree with that is, are you sort of giving your labor for free, which you do with volunteering, but sometimes it's a step in the door to lead to something else, especially if you're changing careers. To get new experience. And of course, then is also looking for casual work instead of taking on a full-time job, is taking on casual work. Yeah, good in moderation. Yeah, I know that. Any other comments, feedback, questions? Okay, something else has come up here. So this person has said, I was back at work full-time since my diagnosis in Feb 2020. Then after a relapse in 2021, I have been less able to work with loss of vocal ability. And in the past month, after yet another relapse, my walking ability has been severely compromised. I'm still working 8 to 12 hours a week, but how do I still manage the days that I'm wiped out? And that's the problem, is if your work is completely wiping you out, like you go to work and then, you're bedbound for the next 3 days, that is sort of like, then the work is too much. So it's around, how do you balance it out? So how do you be able to have that meaningful employment, but still be okay in the days in between? Because you don't want to do, a day's worth of work and then be bedbound for a week, because that doesn't give you any quality of life. So it is really around balancing. And if you're relapsing, that suggests that you're potentially doing too much. So it's working out what is that sort of nice balance. So things that place you at relapse would suggest that you're pushing yourself too much. And then if you're completely wiped out after work, then you're doing too much, basically. So I would be looking at either adapting the type of work that you do or potentially pulling right back until you get to that happy medium where your body can cope with the job that you're doing, but you're not wiped out and you're still having that meaningful employment. Okay. Questions, comments? People can jump in audio as well as messenger chat as well if they want to. Cassie has their hand up. Cassie, did you want to talk? Just need to unmute yourself. Cassie, did you have a question? Okay, Cassie, if you want to ask a question, you need to turn your mute off. Is there anyone else that wants to ask a question? No.
You think you should know what you're doing.
I'm not sure if someone doesn't have their thing on mute or if someone's trying to ask a question. Can you guys hear?
Yeah, we can.
Was that a question? I couldn't hear it. Or is
Not
that just
I think
just
I think-
not on you? All right. If there's no other questions, we'll end the webinar. And we're always available if you've got other questions later on.
And I wasn't able to put that flyer in with the links into the chat for some reason. So I think Kate can share that with you after this
I can
webinar.
share it with the group.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And then our next webinar is Jenny on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And she's going to be doing a webinar on relaxation, stress management, etc. So if you haven't registered for that, you can give me an email. Hold on, sorry, just on my phone. How would the younger age get to work? When you say younger age, do you mean under 18? I've just got a little comment going on here. Yes, under 18. And are you asking if they can get support like through disability services, or how do they physically get to work in terms of transport? In terms of disability services, there's not an age limit on that, is there? In terms of younger age limit, it'll be like what you're able to work at, I'd imagine. So finishing school and then doing disability employment services. And also under NDIS, if people have NDIS, you can get, especially for young people, like the school leavers employment service. So that's another way, using NDIS supports to help people get into the workplace when they've got a disability. That school leaver program is a disability support for younger people when they're sort of leaving school and trying to transition into the workplace. And they can also provide transport support as well. If they can't attend school, would they be able to get work later on? Yeah, we often think that school is sort of the be all and end all. We've got to get our HSC and then we need to go and do study. And there are a number of young people who haven't been able to finish school because of FND, because they just got too unwell. People can always go and get work. They can always do a TAFE course. There's no sort of limits on doing TAFE. People can always go and do the HSC at TAFE later on as well, if that's what they chose to do. But TAFE courses, you know, there's a lot of initiatives now where TAFE courses are being funded for free because of, you know, trying to upskill workers. So there's no issue around not finishing school and being able to work later on. And even getting into university, you know, you can always get into university as a mature age student, even if you haven't done the HSC. There's just a roundabout way to get into the workplace. So for the young people, I often say community jobs plan. Yeah, it's important for the young people's FND, because they do have a better chance of recovery as well, is to focus on their recovery, you know, and managing their FND. And if it impacts on their schooling, their health is actually more important than their schooling, because once they can get their health under control, you know, the school, the study, the work can happen later on. All right, are there any other questions before we finish up? No. Give a few seconds. All right, well, we'll end the session then. You can always email me if you've got any other comments, and then we'll see you back with Jenny on Wednesday. All righty, bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.